First story. Parents did nothing when their older son bullied his younger brother so brutally that he had to cut ties and run away from home. Now, after 8 years, the delusional parents tried to force a reconciliation between their sons because the older brother feels remorseful. But it backfired. I have 4 sons. The oldest, Ezra, and the second youngest, Joseph, had a very bad thing happen between them when they were in the 6th and 4th grades, respectively. My now ex-wife and I were not aware that this had been going on. We were called to the school one day, which was highly unusual. Joseph had gotten pushed down by a peer, especially concerning because he was already in a full arm cast and had to be held back from going after the peer. This led to him screaming and crying until he made himself sick, which is when we were called. We met with the principal, and Joseph made the surprising allegation that he had been being harmed by Ezra for about 2 years. I won't go into too many details, but we learned that his broken arm was a result of some of that harm. They had both told us Joseph had fallen down the stairs, when in reality he had been pushed. Ezra had behavioral issues back then, but we didn't know it was this bad. Social services had to be called, and we were at the school until late that evening sorting things out. Joseph went to a grandparent's house while we figured out what to do with Ezra. The stress was too much for our marriage, which ended shortly after. I kept Ezra, their brothers went with their mother, and Joseph largely remained with his grandparents. Ezra had never harmed the other two, and they have maintained a relationship. Joseph is now 18 and Ezra is 20. Since they are no longer children, I have tried to bridge the gap between Ezra and Joseph, as Ezra wants to reconcile with his brother, but Joseph absolutely refuses. Initially, Joseph was open to talking about it with me. Now, when I mention it, he gets very short and will shut me down immediately. I do not think this is a way to live. We are a broken family, but we are a family, and I feel like this is preventing a lot of healing for both Ezra and Joseph. My other sons, who are maturing well, and my ex-wife all agree with me, but Joseph is now getting angry and has threatened to cut contact, and his grandparents are supporting this. I am the one who initiated this, so I am asking if I am an arsehole for doing so. Ada has no consensus bot. Based on the comments, the OP was YTA. Relevant comments. Fipal Sandra U. I just don't believe that you and your wife didn't know what was going on. You want them to reconcile, so you feel better. Big Fat YTA. OP. We knew he was a bully, and that, out of the brothers, he and Joseph had the rockiest relationship. Over time, we learned Joseph would have felt safe telling us, but Ezra threatened the other two if he did. I know this paints them both in certain lights, but they are both different people now. Old Mama speaks. Ezra, yes, YTA. But question. I am getting a vibe. You say you knew he was a bully. What did you do to get him treatment? More importantly, you seem to gloss over the events of those 2 years like they were no big deal. Was your marriage affected because you kept favoring Ezra, and your wife knew something had to be done? Has Ezra received any treatment? I may be wrong with the golden child vibe, but it sure seems like you want to brush every bad thing about Ezra under the rug, and that you want everyone else to also. OP Ezra has been in behavioral services since about 10 years old, mostly due to school behaviors. We did point out to the specialists that he and Joseph didn't get along, and they said it seemed normal. As for the divorce, we were mandated to isolate Ezra or pursue a residential option. Their mother and I tried to do co-parenting, rotating, and all of that, and it stopped us from being husband and wife. When we separated, we were advised to finalize custody, and Joseph was the one who was first given the choice of what would be best, and he wanted to stay with his grandparents, which we completely understand. In need of chocolate. Did you let a 10-year-old decide where to live? Did either of you actually ever parent that poor child? Initially, when he went to them the day this was revealed, he was undoubtedly angry at us. We asked him who he would feel safest with, and we were both gutted, but understood when he did not choose us. Seb screened it. Okay, then, this is your shining moment to explain. What did you do or advocate for in terms of consequences for Ezra? Did you, for example, fight for or against him going to jail? OP. We did speak to law enforcement at the school, and they deferred to social services so long as Ezra was not going to be under the same roof as his brothers. Ezra's life for the next year was school, chores, and therapy. That was it. We switched schools so Joseph and his brothers could stay at the one they knew. We sold his game system, his collectible cards, all of it. Ezra had no privileges. Then people working with him encouraged us to start reintroducing things as he earned them so as to not treat him like a prisoner. Canadian Girl 1984. There had to have been other options for Ezra to be removed completely. How can you be so okay with him getting to live with you, when Joseph felt it was safer for him to leave you and your ex and stay with his grandparents? You wouldn't have fought them if they were going to take him. But you didn't do anything. Did he have to stay in the city or state? You couldn't have sent him away. Our options were essentially to send Ezra away with no real knowing of if he was getting help or being set up to hurt other people, or have him remain with us so we could get our obviously disturbed child help in hopes he would never hurt someone again. Joseph was told that he could come home and never have to see Ezra again, or if he felt safest there, he could stay with his grandparents. When he chose that, we made the decision to continue raising Ezra for the latter reason stated above. We had no right to try to sway Joseph from his choice. He felt safe. We were not going to take that away. In need of chocolate mum, so you never got them family therapy. You never gave Joseph the opportunity to say anything he might say to Ezra. Or to you and his mom, who failed to protect him. It's just been all about Ezra for the past 8 years. We were court-ordered to keep them separated. There was no way to do family therapy with Joseph and Ezra together. Update 1. Hello again. Even to those who think I'm the scum of the earth. I met with Joseph for breakfast this morning, something we already had pre-arranged. While we were there, I told him I was deeply sorry for trying to convince him to talk to and forgive his brother. I told him I was wrong, and that moving forward, I would be 100% behind him to support and enforce his boundaries. I learned that Ezra had been given Joseph's phone number by their mother, and a day or two before my last talk with him, when he had gotten understandably cold, Ezra had called and left him a voicemail. When he didn't call back, the second oldest brother also called Joseph and asked him why he didn't respond. I was completely in the dark about all of this. I know this is a very regrettable trend on my part. I asked Joseph what he needed me to do. He asked if I would talk to his mother, and I said absolutely. Me, Ezra, their brothers, and their mother are going to talk this weekend, and I am currently thinking of how to lay down the law with them. I have already told Ezra to delete his number, and I did not mince words. I asked Joseph if he would rather meet with me and his mother and brothers minus Ezra, so he could voice his concerns to them, and he said no, which I understand. That's a hard thing for an 18-year-old to do. We are supposed to tour some colleges in the coming weeks, and I think he is planning to uninvite his mother, which I understand. At the end of the day, I think I will always desire for all of my sons to be a family with each other again. But I am going to do better about not being as completely selfish about it as I was recently. I am going to do what I can to try to help them all have healthy and safe lives in their own ways moving forward. I feel incredibly grateful that Joseph and I still have the relationship we do, and I am going to work hard to make sure I don't tarnish that more than I already have. Thanks everyone. Relevant comments. Canadian Girl 1984. Thank you for finally putting Joseph first. Sorry, but your ex and other kids are still giant Oz. Ezra knew Joseph didn't want to talk to him, and he still selfishly put himself first. Your ex never should have given out his number without his consent. Your other sons need to stay out of this completely. They have no say in any of this. If they want to have a relationship with Ezra, that is their right. I still think they are Oz after learning Joseph protected them from wanting to have a relationship with him. Please stay in Joseph's corner. He needs it after all he has been through. If your ex and other sons don't back off, they will most likely lose him altogether. I don't think you want to lose him completely. I don't know what colleges he is looking at going to, but if they're far away, he will have a good opportunity to just cut contact with everyone. I would love to read an update after your conversation with them. You may have to put your foot down hard, depending on how they react. Please just put Joseph first in this situation, even if your other kids get defensive over it. I know I am not any better in any regard, but when he told me about the phone calls, I was very, very shocked and disappointed. Especially given that I told Ezra not to send the letters he had written not terribly long ago. Dull Negotiation 314. Hey, just curious, how would you describe your relationship with Joseph before this most recent deal with Ezra? Was it a strong one? I'm only asking because I'm guessing you had to rebuild a lot of the relationship after what happened. And a relationship that has been broken before is more at risk. I would say so. We talk a few times a week, and I'm always at his sports games. He confides in me sometimes. Occasionally, when I have to travel for work over the weekend, he likes to come with me. We did have to rebuild when he was younger. I feel like those are indicative of at least a good relationship. Update 2. For the record, I have asked Joseph if he is okay with me sharing these things on a public forum for outside perspective. He laughed and said sure, saying that he had considered it himself recently. I told him I was flogged for the first post, and he chuckled and said, well, yeah. I met with their mother and youngest brother today, though Ezra and the brother between them in age joined us over the phone. I started with their mother and told her that she had absolutely no right to give Joseph's number away. This was out of the presence of the other boys, but her explanation was that since Ezra stayed with me, she feels she has to make up ground in their relationship. I told her that by doing this, she made up ground with Ezra by taking away from Joseph's. She started to say I was being dramatic, but I told her if she felt that way, then she could say that to Joseph, and she shut up immediately. Sorry if that's a harsh way to put it. I am not happy with her for this and other reasons related to her current boyfriend and his influence on our boys. Joseph told me today that the boyfriend is the one who has preached forgiveness to their mother, and he feels that because it's a value the boyfriend has, his mother is now trying to push it for the boyfriend's approval. Additionally, he said the first time he met this guy, he said, so you're the one with the grudge. I told him he could cut them both the hell off if he wanted. When we were all together, I told them that Ezra's name was not to be mentioned to Joseph under any circumstances unless he brought it up. My middle son got defensive at first, but ultimately understood. Ezra said he was sad to hear this but agreed, and I told him it should make him and the rest of us sad. The youngest, I think, feels blindsided. I was mistaken in that I thought he was aware of all that was going on recently, but he was not. I apologized for lumping him into this at first, but explained that it's important for him to hear the boundaries verbalized again. He is 15, by the way. Still learning. Joseph came over to my house after all that, and I can tell he's struggling a little. I asked if he wanted to talk, but he said not today, so we've just been watching sports. I kind of wanted to thank everyone for lighting me up the other day. This is not to win any sympathy, but this has been a nightmare for many of us, especially Joseph, for years. I've worked and tried to be as present as I could be with all 4 boys living under 3 roofs, 2 of which I paid for, along with paying for all of their therapies and other needed outlets. During that, I grieved the loss of our marriage. I haven't really slept in 8 years, but perhaps that is karma for the 2 years I missed what was happening between my boys. Here's why I mention this. I got tired, and despite everything I've learned, I just wanted this all to end and bought into the belief that Joseph forgiving Ezra was the only way to bring about that, and I was wrong as hell. All of your slaps in the face helped me remember everything we've worked on that I lost sight of. Thank you for the well wishes for the upcoming college tour. We'll manage to squeeze 4 visits into 1 week soon, and it will be just me and him, as well as some leisure travel along the way. We are both looking forward to it. Second story. My golden child brother bullies me and my wife, which I let go of because family. My last straw was when he called my 2-month-old baby a racial slur. I lost it and lashed out at him. Now entitled parents took his side, calling me a bastard and demanding I apologize for humiliating him and expects I'll attend his wedding. So my brother 32M has always been rude to me 34M. When I first met my wife 33 5 years ago, he started to be rude to her as well and made fun of her because she was not as educated as him. His fiancée came onto the scene around a year ago, and she was no different and made fun of my wife for not being as educated as them. It was a big issue. There were a lot of fights in my family because of the things they said about my wife, and my parents told us to forgive them. Fine, we did. Last week, my brother was again making fun of me while we were at a friend's place. I let it slide and just laughed it off because I'm just used to it at this point. After a while, I had enough and made a comment about his appearance. He immediately became angry and started making fun of our newborn 2 months old in front of everyone, including his fiancée. I lost it. I swore at him and yelled at him. One of our friends told him to apologize, and of course he didn't. His fiancée didn't tell him to apologize or stop. I told our parents that I have no interest in talking to him or his fiancée, and that my wife, our baby, and I are not attending the wedding. Now my parents are telling us to attend. What will people think if we aren't there, etc. He still hasn't said sorry and instead is saying I'm at fault because I made fun of him. So, would I be the arsehole if we didn't attend the wedding? Comments. Old Web 8071. Who gives a rat's arse what people will think if you don't attend? If anyone asks, tell them you were tired of his and his fiancée's abuse of your family. Isil is colonialism. Yeah, my brother is an arsehole who made fun of my newborn child. So I'm not coming to the wedding. End of story. Pretty off Cape Town. I'd announce this in a group-wide chat, that you're not the least bit interested in supporting someone who bullies a newborn or the people who expect you to grin and bear it. He treated you like crap. He treated your wife like crap. Now he thinks treating your newborn like crap is fair game. The time to let it slide and laugh it off is over. It's past time to make a hard boundary and enforce it. Go to NC with him and your equally disgusting parents, who are more concerned with appearances than the fact that their golden child just bullied their newborn grandson. Take your time re-establishing contact once they prove they've changed their ways. And block anyone else who tries to give you SHT about this. They're less important than your kid. Maybe he and his fiancée plan to kick puppies on their honeymoon as a nice bonding activity. Judgment. NTA. Update. 2 days later. For those of you who say this is a made-up story, it is not made up. This really happened, and I wish I were making it up. We went over to my parents' house last night. My brother was there as well. My parents start telling me to just move on and forget about it. My brother has told them that he is sorry for what he said, and that he says he made a mistake. I told them, how can I just forget about it? And if he were as remorseful as you guys are saying, then he could have apologized to my family and me. But he has not, and it has been over a week at this point. My brother says he made fun of my baby because I made fun of him. I tell him, I responded back to you. And even if I made fun of you first, your automatic response is to make fun of the baby, and not me. You think you're justified in making fun of my baby for no reason. He literally says yes, he is justified. My parents didn't tell him to stop. I ask him, so if I made fun of your baby when you had one, would that be right? Would I be justified? He doesn't answer. I ask him about this 3 more times, and he doesn't respond. That let me know that no, if the roles were reversed, I wouldn't be justified. Then my brother says that he will apologize to me if I apologize to him first. My parents tell me to apologize to him. I told them why I would ever apologize for making fun of him with a comment about him when he was making fun of me for hours, until I snapped and responded back, and his automatic response was not to make fun of me back, but to insult my newborn. I asked them to explain why they think I need to apologize to him first, when I don't think I'm in the wrong here. They don't explain, and instead start calling me a bastard, useless, etc. My mom is like, families always fight, and they make up. I say, yes, families fight. Siblings have arguments amongst themselves, but they don't stoop so low and start making fun of babies or children for no reason at all. At this point, I'm pissed. I tell them what kind of grandparents you are, and that you are faulting me for sticking up for my baby, and not tolerating him making fun of my baby. I tell them, if you think I'm wrong for sticking up for my baby, then why don't you guys call Dad's brother and apologize to him? Side note. A few years ago, we found out Dad's brother was spreading false rumors about my brother, and my parents haven't talked to him since. I tell them Dad's brother has emailed you, said sorry, and said that he was wrong, so why don't you guys call him, apologize, and make up? Dad starts calling me an arsehole, a bastard, and all kinds of names. I respond back, saying that I am just following your line of thought. At this point, I knew this wasn't going to be resolved, so my wife and I left. My brother hasn't apologized, and I will never apologize, and that's where we stand now. I still can't believe that I am being labeled as at fault for this mess. How can I be at fault for not tolerating his making fun of my baby? How can I be at fault for not wanting to apologize to him? I don't think I owe him an apology. If he can dish it, then he should be able to take it. He shouldn't have responded by making fun of my baby, and that too in front of multiple people. I never thought that my family would think it was okay to make fun of a newborn. Edit. Wow, just wow. Dad called, and I answered. He asks if I'm going to be at the wedding. I told him no. Why would I go after everything? He says, so you want everyone to know about this? I didn't respond. He then says to me, I hope you end up on the streets. I say, how can you say that? And he responds, yeah, I hope you end up in the streets. And I respond, wow, are you really wishing your children ended up in the streets? He says, yes, because you are a bastard. I hung up. This is just too much for me. I have no interest in talking to any of them. Comments. Not dealing today. The worst part is that your brother isn't the biggest issue in the situation. Your parents are enabling him to be an arsehole, and when they hear the true story, ask you to apologize first. You stood your ground and didn't give them what they wanted. This will go one of 2 ways. They'll respect you more and won't treat you as a pushover, or they won't talk to you. Either way, I think you come out ahead. You don't want that type of toxicity around your newborn. Side note. Nice work, Dad, sticking up for your child like that while staying calm. If anyone in my family made fun of one of my children, even at their age now, I'd throw hands. Iron Mike 11B. You need to consider cutting them all off. He is apparently the golden child of the family based on how your parents treat him compared to how they treat you. You can throw reality in their face all day, and they will still side with him. Mobius stripping. Nowhere have you said what any of this making fun of consists of, though. Like, there is a really big difference between saying your newborn is ugly and, for example, a racial slur. OP. He and his fiancée have made fun of my wife in the past for being darker in color than them. He called my baby a darkie. Third story. I introduced my girlfriend to my best friend, and he says she is creepy and wants me to dump her, saying the things she does which I found cute, and then all my friends sided with him. Is she creepy? Hi Reddit, I 22M started dating my girlfriend. Let's call her Alice 21F, about 7 months ago. We met while working on a group project for one of our college classes. From the moment I met her, I felt an instant connection. She was beautiful and smart, and we shared a bunch of common interests. Long story short, we flirted for a few weeks before I finally asked her out, and we've been happily going out since. Now here comes the problem. About a month ago, my friends and I were planning to hang out, and I invited Alice. While I and Alice are from the same hometown, we met during college, and the majority of our relationship has been during the school year. While we know each other's college friends, we've never met each other's hometown friends. I know that Alice has really bad social anxiety, so I was hesitant to invite her at first. But when I did ask, she seemed nervous, but really excited. The party seemed to go really well. Alice was smiling and laughing the whole time, and she even got to go on a rant about a topic she really liked. When it was over, she even told me, while I was taking her home, how much she liked my friends. When I asked my friends what they thought of Alice, they all said she seemed nice. All except my best friend, Ruben 22M. When I asked him, he told me that he hated her. I immediately questioned why. I was hoping it was them not mixing well, as I can acknowledge that Ruben and Alice are complete opposites when it comes to interests and personalities. But Ruben told me he hated her because of how creepy she is, and I was better off dumping her. Now this threw me off, as I had never once considered Alice creepy. She's actually the cutest girl I've ever met, and I've never felt more comfortable around someone than I do around her. Before I could even ask what he meant, he went off on a rant about how uncomfortable she made him and started citing stories I told him about our dates during college. Stuff like how she'd stare at me without saying anything and just enjoyed looking at me, how she ate the same meals whenever we went to dinner, how unjealous she was when a girl came up and flirted with me, or about her deep knowledge of poisons and love for murder mysteries and true crime, both of which she could talk about for hours, but neither of which she actually talked about at the party. He said that while he wrote them off before since they didn't seem to bother me, which they don't, after meeting her in person and seeing how weird and flighty she was, he can tell that she's a secret psycho and will end up either breaking my heart or physically hurting me. I tried to explain to him how any weirdness was, probably just because she was nervous about meeting them for the first time. But he insisted that we've had friends so's have anxiety before, and it was that she was plain weird. I blew him off at first because he sounded effing crazy. Alice isn't perfect, but she's far from creepy. But after 2 weeks of him telling me to dump her and me getting tired of telling him to drop it, I reached out to a few of our friends to prove him wrong. But to my surprise, they all agreed that Alice was creepy. Most of them said that the way she spoke really threw them off, which is fair since Alice can be weirdly formal sometimes. But I didn't notice her doing that at the party at all. And typically, it's much more funny than unsettling. Most of my friends told me it wasn't enough to break up with her since they still genuinely found her sweet and fun to be around. But I did have one other friend say it was worth breaking up over, and he was just too embarrassed to tell me at first. I have no plans of breaking up with Alice, because all the stuff they're calling creepy, I find cute when she does. But are they right? Is it creepy that she does that stuff? Should I talk to her about it? Should I just tell my friends to F off and ignore their concerns? I feel bad for even asking about this, but with all my friends agreeing, it's starting to gnaw at me, and I just need some clarification on whether it's actually creepy or if they're just being dramatic. Update. 9 days later. Wow, thank you all so much for your helpful comments and validation. I'm glad y'all agree that the stuff Alice is doing isn't really creepy. Anyway, let's get into the meat of this update. Since I originally posted, I have spoken with each of my friends individually and talked to them about what they said. Pretty much all of them apologized, and some even offered to apologize to Alice herself, which at the time I said no to since I didn't really want them interacting with her. But we'll get back to that later. The only one who didn't apologize, as I'm sure you guessed, was Ruben. I want to address some comments suggesting that Ruben could either be attracted to me or maybe even Alice. I don't think either of those are true, as Alice is the first girlfriend Ruben has ever acted like this with, even though I've dated plenty of girls and Alice isn't his usual type. He may still be attracted to her. I mean, she is effing gorgeous, but I've known the guy since 3rd grade, so I know he's pretty picky about the girls he's with. So I don't think it's that I think he's just a major DCK. I've known Ruben literally my whole life, since our moms were college friends and moved close to each other when we were young. With so much history, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt by just asking him to drop it since I really didn't care if he found her creepy. I really liked her, and he'd just have to deal with it if he wanted to continue being friends. He didn't apologize or even say he was wrong, but he did agree to stop commenting on it. Which isn't perfect, but works for now as I consider if I really want to continue to be friends with him. Yesterday, I met up with Alice for a casual date. It wasn't anything fancy, just a home picnic. I have really bad allergies, so we couldn't do it outside. We had some candles and our favorite foods, and we watched movies and dissected our favorite tropes. About halfway through our 3rd movie, Alice brought up Ruben since she heard about an upcoming car show or auction her dad told her about. And she remembered me saying that he loved vintage cars and suggested the 3 of us and a friend of hers who was also into cars could go together, so she could get to know him better. It felt crazy that she suggested this days after mine and Ruben's fight, and it made me feel sick with how sweet she was being to such a jerk. I gave some weak excuses about how she hates car shows and doesn't have to do that, or how Ruben wouldn't be comfortable doing that. My girlfriend being the angel, she was told she could toughen through it, or even just let me and Ruben go together if he wasn't comfortable with her yet. And she'd even pay for the tickets because it was a private showing. This was the point I made, and I told her everything that happened. She took it really well, just calmly listening while I rambled through my explanation, and even ended up apologizing to me for weirding out her friends. I tried to explain that it wasn't her fault, and she didn't need to apologize. As a lot of you suspected, she ended up telling me how she believed she was autistic. But since she hadn't gotten an official diagnosis, she wasn't comfortable telling people. After a lot of guiltily back and forth between the 2 of us, she told me she didn't want me cutting off my friends since they did apologize and didn't say anything cruel. She just pointed out her neurodivergent tendencies, which aren't an insult to her. But I put my foot down that I for sure won't be bringing her around Ruben anymore and planned to distance myself from him and my other friends for the time being, which she agreed was fair. She also wants to meet up with my friends who want to apologize to her since they seem genuine in their regret. Overall, things turned out pretty well, and thank you all so much for your input. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.